Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegrand, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 7-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, David and Hoges recap the Twins' 3-game series sweep against the Kansas City Royals to open the 2023 Minnesota Twins baseball season. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis, and with me in studio is Andrew Hoges Hoganson, Dan Thompson out living the life in Chile. I don't know. Who just goes to Chile, Hoges? And you're in Florida? I don't understand this. So I'm sitting at home. Minnesota can't decide if it's spring or winter here. It dumps a foot of snow, and then it's all trying to melt today. And you're out. You look tan, Hoges. How are you tan?
Oh, it's nice. It's 85 and sunny here right now. It's pretty amazing. We were a little worried that we weren't going to get out because of the 18 inches or whatever that got dumped on us, but I am very happy to be here. I'm a little jealous of Dan, though. Chile sounds pretty amazing, and I guess I got to pick up the slack for him today, I suppose.
Yes, well, thank you so much for filling in. And Hoges, you know, there are times it seems that when you fill in, the Twins play better. I don't know what it is.
Oh, every single time. I'm the good luck charm. I'm telling you guys, if you want to win a World Series, you just need to have me on more. We'll get more results like this. I mean, 3-0 to start the season. You can't ask for a better start than that. It was funny. You and I went to the opening day thing that they had for season ticket holders at Target Field, and everyone was yelling, undefeated, when we walked out, and you kind of poo-poo that a little bit. But after 3 games, I mean, that's something to be excited about.
Yes, it is. And this is the first time the Twins have opened their season with 2 straight shutouts, and then it's their first time to sweep an opening series since 2017, which they actually did at home against the Royals, believe it or not.
And wasn't it the first time for a starter to get a win on the road in opening day since like 1912 or something like that? I mean, it's been forever. It's just nice to start the season out like this. And you made a good point when we recorded our season opening podcast. These first 2 series mean a lot just because we have the Astros coming up after the Marlins here.
Well, and it's interesting watching those Astros seem to struggle against the White Sox a little bit. It hasn't been like a dominating performance that I was hoping. I mean, don't get me wrong. I hate cheering for the Astros, but the AL Central is going to be a tight race this season, so we got to cheer against anybody who's playing against AL Central teams.
Yeah, I got to admit, that was weird. Cheering, like, I did not want the Asterisks to win, but, like, it's the White Sox, so what do you do there? I mean, there I think you just turn it off and hope the game ends in a tie. Like, Selig's going to come in and just be like, you know what, we're calling it. This is good. You all get a point in the standings.
We're doing ties now. Dan will really appreciate your usage of puns, obviously. It's good that there's someone here to fill that gap.
I got to fill in for him. That's my job. That's my job.
All right, well, with that, let's jump into the series recap.
Series recap.
Game 1, like you said, Hoges, we got to watch this one at Target Field, check out the new scoreboard. It was pretty neat, and the Twins come away with the victory 2-0. Pablo Lopez as advertised, Hoges.
That's how you draw up the bullpen, right? I mean, you have Thielbar come in, and then you have Jax come in, Lopez and Duran, and scoreless game. I mean, that's what more can you want? Buxton lighting it up on the base paths and at the plate. That's what we're looking for in this team, and we kind of got a little dose of that all in Game 1. Not a lot happened in that game. I mean, it was just 2-0. But you like what you see early on.
We do have to talk about one jam in the bottom of the 5th that Pablo Lopez escaped, quote unquote. So Melendez is at bat. There's 1 out, bases loaded, and Lopez throws a ball inside. It would be a ball if Melendez didn't swing, but Melendez swings at it and hits a dribbler up the first base line. Gallo comes in to field the ball, but after he picks it up, Melendez thinks that Gallo is going to tag him, but Gallo instead alertly throws the ball to home to record the out at home, and then they get the double play because Melendez was slowed up by Gallo getting in his way to field the ball. So my question is, Hoges, first of all, Lopez got a little lucky that Melendez was swinging at that pitch, but secondly, do you think Gallo did that intentionally, like maybe took another step in his way just to make sure that he slowed him up enough to get the double play at first?
I think it's giving him more credit than he deserves for it, because at that point in time it was a 0-0 game, so you have to go home on that play no matter what. So I think all he was worried about was getting the lead runner. It just happened to work out very well that it slowed Melendez down, and so they were able to get that double play. But it was weird watching because when I saw the play happen, I thought, okay, that's an out at home. There's no chance we're getting a double play. And then Vasquez throws over to first, and Melendez is maybe like halfway down the line. And at first we were like, did he just not run? And then watching the replay, you can see that he didn't want to run into Gallo, but the Twins got really lucky on that play, and it was nice. I mean, it preserved the shutout, and they went on to score 2 more runs later in the game.
So we do have to talk about one other element of this game, and that would be Buxton has a triple. But Buxton's first slide of the season, Hogs. Oof.
He bounced. He bounced when he went into third. I've never heard people, like, because we were at Target Field with all the season ticket holders, just a collective... I mean, everyone was so excited, and then that happened, and I mean, man, that guy, he just brings so much excitement, and at this opposite side, so much terror into the heart of Minnesotans, because you know how valuable he is. And then when he did the little buck truck sign after that, I'm like, okay, he's not dead, at least, so I think that's a good sign. But I've never been happier when he came up to bat again later in the game. I'm like, okay, they're fine. They would have pulled him if there was something wrong.
It's shocking how often you're just waiting for that next at bat to see if Buxton's actually going to come out of the dugout.
And let's talk about this a little bit more. How can someone so athletic have such a terrible slide into third? And then even in game 2, he just slid with his face into second on that double that he had. I mean, he has more athleticism in his little finger than I do in my whole body, even when I was at the prime of my life in 25. And I can slide better than that. I can say that.
2 other notes from this game. Just a real quick shout out to Rocco. My goodness, pinch hitting. He went 2 for 2. He had Farmer come in and he got a hit. He had Solano come in and he got a hit and an RBI. So Rocco, I don't know what he's doing, but he's feeling it. You can see him, how he's moving in the dugout. He just feels good, Hogs.
Yeah, I think we'll get into this a little bit more in our later segments, but I think the one thing that benefits Rocco a lot this year is he actually has a bench. It's not just Caleb Hamilton sitting there and Billy Hamilton. It's not the Hamiltons. So
I am not throwing away my shot.
It was nice to be able to see him have options, and not only to have those options, but to see those options produce.
Yes, absolutely. So last note, Hogs, you took Gallo for Puckett's picks. No spoilers here. We'll get to the Puckett's picks winner a little bit later. However, we saw an interesting development because of the shift ban. The way that the Royals aligned for Gallo's at bats, they had the center fielder shade to left. They had the right fielder shade a little bit closer to center, and then they brought the left fielder in to play where typically the shortstop or the second baseman would have played last year when the shift was allowable. Now, I don't know how often this will happen, but Hogs was a little upset because Gallo reached because the left fielder bobbled the ball and couldn't get it into first base. And it's just odd because that's labeled an error, but if the fielders were aligned in the way that you would expect them to be, it would have been a hit, no question.
There's zero chance you give him an error. You can't give a right fielder an error on a grounder, on a single. I mean, there's zero, that's not an error. If you're going to have the shift banned, that is not an error. And like you said, no spoilers. I would have been so much angrier if this would have come down to this play. But I mean, you and I almost ended our friendship even at the game over this because you were adamant that was an error. And I'll be honest, I was kind of surprised. We were with about 4 other people, and I was the only one who thought that it should have been a hit. But I don't know. You can't give an outfielder an error on a grounder that's a single. I mean, that just doesn't compute.
It's odd. I'll give you that. But I was talking to a buddy earlier today, actually, and he had said, well, regardless of how the fielders are aligned, if there was a play that you could have made and you did not make it, it should be an error.
But that's precedent then. I mean, then we're saying that if they are shifting like that, and again, you might be right. This might just be a Gallo shift. We'll see how much it actually happens. I mean, because there's a lot of green grass when they're doing a shift like that. But if he can't prove to get around that, this might be the new norm. But then they have to call it that way the whole time. I mean, that was kind of a defining moment right there, as minuscule as it sounds.
It was fun to watch with anticipation to see how the scorekeeper was going to call it. Wait, is it a hit? Is it an error? Hogs is drastically getting his phone to refresh to figure out if he's going to get a point or not.
Well, it was weird because normally when you're at the stadium, you get the little blurb that pops up on the banner that goes around the whole stadium, but they didn't have that going when we were at Target Field. So I had to rely on Gamecast, which is always a little bit behind. So yeah, that was probably, and I say this in a good way, one of the more exciting moments of that whole game 1 because the Twins were in control.
Speaking of in control, let's go to game 2. If you just look at the box score quickly, if you just glance at it, you might be a little confused because it looks awfully similar to game 1 here. Twins come away with this one, victory 2 2-0, and this time it was Sonny Gray on the mound. But again, all we have is aces, Hogs. All of these guys are Cy Young candidates, certainly. There's no surprise of the results here.
I mean, one of them's finishing in the top 3 for sure. But yeah, Gray struggled a little bit more than Lopez did. I mean, you look at his line, it's still fine, but like he walked a few more guys, didn't get as quite as many strikeouts. But when you're not giving up any runs, I'm not going to complain about it.
The bullpen usage was interesting because the bullpen usage was different than game 1, which you almost would have thought, well, maybe Rocco would have done the same as game 1 because there was a day off the day before. But so it went Gray, Alcala, Jax, Thielbar, Lopez, which in game 1, it went Thielbar, Lopez, Jax, Duran. So part of that might be a matchup game that Rocco's playing, but also it's like, wouldn't you think some consistency here is good? I mean, I don't want to argue with results, but to me in my head, I'm thinking, assuming the matchups aren't that drastic here, I think I'd want to sort of try and cement guys into their positional for the whole season.
I kind of disagree with you here. I think if Lopez is really what we hoped he was when we traded for him, and him and Duran are more interchangeable than maybe we all would think, I think that's a good thing for this team because Duran is going to produce, and if Lopez is at that level where Rocco is comfortable putting him into these high leverage situations, I mean, because Duran, you have to imagine, was available in game 2 after having the off day, and to me, that's a sign of confidence from Rocco. I'm fine with him going off of the matchups and not going with a true closer, but Lopez has to be on the same level as Duran, and so far this year, that's what we've seen.
Yeah, you hope that Lopez finds his comfort level and he just pitches the way that he did the first half of the season last year with the Orioles. Another note here, Byron Buxton, there are times when you watch him, you just see the impact that he can have on a game. So Buxton scored both the runs in this game, but it's really important in top 6 to pay attention to what this guy did. So first of all, he hits a single, fine, no problem. Then he advances on a passed ball. Then on a fielder's choice, hit to the shortstop. So Buxton's at second, okay? So it's important to realize Buxton is at second. The ball is hit to the shortstop, and Buxton's like, well, I'm just going to go to third anyway. And so the shortstop is sort of like locked. He can't decide, does he take the out at first or does he try and get Buxton at third? And he throws to third. Buxton beats the throw. And so now you got guys on first and third as opposed to just a guy on second. So to cap it all off, you have Kyle Farmer come in. And his job here obviously is to get Buxton home. A sac fly will do it. There's only one out. And Farmer hits the weakest fly ball to center field that you've ever seen. The guy has all day to get under it. And he's like 6 feet behind second base at this point. And Buxton tags up and he beats the throw home. The guy is incredible.
You got to love him on the base paths. He just adds so much more intensity when he's out there and just makes the fielders nervous all the time because they know what he can do with his speed. That's why he's so valuable to have in this lineup day after day. And I agree with what you said. You have him in there as DH. He can still do those kind of things on the base paths.
Last note in game 2. So Miranda did have an error in this game, and you can tell he's not quite 100% at third base. He's made some really good plays in the series, but he had an error, and there was a moment where they probably could have turned 2 if Miranda was a little bit quicker with his throw. But overall, I'll take what he's done at third base thus far because his bat is that valuable.
Yeah, and I think we got to give him a little bit time because like they said, his shoulder's not completely right. He's played a good chunk of the year at first base last year too, so getting settled into this position where it's his, he knows it's his, I think that'll be good for him. I mean, let's talk about that in 40 games and see like kind of how he's producing at third because like we've talked about it ad nauseum, his bat is what he brings to this lineup and all he has to do is be average at third base.
Yeah, well, let's go on to game 3. Twins win this one 7-4. It's just so fun, Hogs, to finally be again able to say Twins win, Twins win, Twins win. We haven't said it in a long time, and now we got to say it 3 times in a row.
Yeah, and the starting pitching continued. I mean, Joe Ryan was fantastic in game 3 today. We even saw our favorite guy out there with Emilio Pagan to make it a little exciting at the end. But I mean, and then Joey Gallo coming through. This was a fantastic way to just wrap up this series.
Yeah, it was fun to see the offense kind of produce. They struggled. Yes, they won all 3 games, but sort of in spite of themselves in a lot of ways, which we'll get to a little bit later. But yeah, Ryan goes 6 innings pitched, so he goes the deepest into the games for all 3 of the starters. But he gives up a solo shot, the first run surrendered by the Minnesota Twins this season, which is kind of crazy in game 3.
Oh, man, I'll take that.
Yes, and then it went Moran, Lopez, and Pagan. And Pagan comes in. It's just, you feel for the guy a little bit because everybody's thinking the exact same thing. Like, why? Like, is this enough runs? Like, I don't know
do
if
we need
ahead.
him? Are we? Is everyone else just dead in the bullpen? Do we have to put him out there? Like,
They're all
where's
taking
Nick
naps.
Gordon?
Yeah. Put Gordon out there. But so Pagan starts with a double followed by a single to score the double, and it's like, okay, I don't like this. I don't like this feeling. Why are we even doing this? We have lots of other options. However, there's no off day day. We go right into a series against the Marlins starting tomorrow. So you do have to use guys, and I guess if this is the time when you're going to use Pagan, I guess I'd rather have it now than any other time throughout this series.
Yeah, and ultimately it ended in a win. So you know what? Let's just focus on that right now. We all got a little nervous, but we got to win.
Yeah. And you wrote in the notes here, Lopez has been perfect in his 3 outings for the season to begin.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that they kept him in there, or they ended up using him in all 3 games instead of Duran. And it's exciting for me that he hasn't given up a run. He hasn't given up a hit in 2.2 innings pitched. So I'm excited about that start for him. He's a guy that I'm really looking at the beginning of this season to see what is more indicative of what his performance is. The first half of last year when he was an all-star with the Orioles, or the second half with the Twins when he kind of fell apart a little bit. And I think there's been some interesting interviews with him where he said he was a little amped up coming to a team that was going to be competitive, but he kind of worked on that. He worked on his mental game a little bit, and he's ready for this year. And the early results are fascinating and super exciting so far.
Well, with that, Hogs, let's go ahead and jump into our segments, starting with the first Puckett's Picks winner reveal of the season.
I love it.
Catch 'em all, Kirby Puckett!
Puckett's Picks winner.
Okay, here we go. Full disclosure. Like we've said, Hogs and I got to watch the opener together at Target Field, and I was dogging pretty hard on Joey Gallo because Gallo had a rough start to the season. He goes 0 for 2. Okay, then he got lifted for Solano. So I'm thinking, well, Hogs, your faith is misguided. I would not have picked Joey Gallo. However, Gallo's monster game 3. Hogs comes away with the victory. Gallo had 11 points. Dan had Buxton, who had 6 points, and I took Correa because my rule still stands. If Correa is available, I'll take him. And Correa had -1. So that $200 million to good use here.
I want to build a championship culture.
So not only did you get on my case when we were watching the game and Gallo was just underperforming, I mean, that added a little bit to our argument about whether or not that should have been an error in right field because we had a little bit riding on it. I have the receipts here, though. Yesterday at 8:07 p.m., Gallo may be in the running for lowest Puckett's Pick score ever. And I won. I won with 11. It was nice seeing him come through in game 3, though. I mean, that's kind of what he's going to be this year, but I'll take that. He more or less won us game 3 today. 2 home runs. I'm happy to take home that victory. There was a lot of grief, but I went with my gut. Listeners, we're in it this year. We're in it to win it.
Yes, very good. Very good. I did do a quick check, and Miguel Sano has the record with like -1,000, I think, for lowest Puckett's Pick
It'd be hard. I don't even know if there's enough at-bats in a 3-game series to end up passing Sano on that.
Well, especially last season, if Sano had a chance to play in one of those 5-game series, really.
You Sano for 4 a couple times. I mean, that's a lot of negative points.
What's the opposite of the sky's the limit saying?
Yeah, right.
Anyway, okay, so real quick, if you're unfamiliar with Puckett's Picks, basically what happens each series, we pick a player that we think is going to perform well in the following series. They get 1 point per base, 1 point per RBI, 1 point per stolen base, -1 per strikeout, -1 for grounding into a double play, and -1 per error. And then we go in reverse order for who gets to pick first, but the listeners, or Hogs when he's on the show, always gets to pick first. I am the reigning champ. I've won the last 2 seasons, so I'm hoping to cement my dynasty, but Hogs is convinced this is the year for the listeners.
So just to confirm, like when you hit 2 home runs in one game, that's good for your pick, right? Like when that'll end up leading to a victory 9 times out of 10.
It likely 10 points, I think, is likely to score you a victory every time. I would think.
I love it. Well, here we go.
All right, well, let's go on here to Beast versus Bench.
Beast versus Bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
So in this segment, basically, we're going to pick the player who we felt was the most impactful or played the best for the team, as well as the player who we felt was lacking and maybe should have been on the bench for the series.
Well, I got to take a page out of Mr. Dan Thompson's book here. It's Joey Gallo. He won me Puckett's Picks. He had a fantastic game today with 2 home runs. That's all I'm expecting out of him. Like bat right around 200, which I think his batting average is actually a lot higher than that after, because he hit a double today too. If he produces like that, this team is dangerous, and he does matter a lot because he is so good in the field. And with him being able to play first base, with Kirilloff being hurt, I'm definitely going to give the Beast to him.
Yeah, I can't blame you, and I probably would have done the same thing had I picked Gallo, but I didn't pick Gallo. I picked Correa. That does not mean I'm picking Correa for my Beast. That would not be correct. I'm going to go with Buxton. I just think that game 2, he more or less willed this team to victory. And that guy has shown how important he is to this team, and he's shown when he's healthy, even when he's not in the field, even when he's DHing, he is so so valuable.
Well, the thing about him is the most exciting plays of the game in game 1 and game 2 were all him, and he was DHing. I mean, that's unbelievable. And I mean, he led to 2 wins with his actions on the field and hitting, even with just being a DH. I think it's fun to watch.
I thought about Larnach, but we'll talk about him in a minute here. Who do you have on your bench, Hogs?
I went with Kepler. It pained me a little bit just because you picked him for your LVP or whatever, but
least valuable player if you're unfamiliar with LVP. I don't know if we made that up or if that's an actual thing out in the ether. Yeah.
But yeah, he went 0 for 5 in game 1, 0 for 4 in game 2, and 0 for 4 in game 3 with 2 strikeouts. That's not what you need out of your leadoff hitter. Granted, you can argue that he's not necessarily your prototypical leadoff hitter, but if you look at this lineup, if not him, who? But that's not a great start. We keep talking about how the shift is going to benefit him this year with that being banned. Early results are not great. He did put the ball in play a decent amount of times with only 2 strikeouts, but that's been his problem his whole career. He puts the ball in play, they're just not falling. And it's kind of like Emilio Pagan. Sure, you have great stuff. Sure, you put the ball in play, but if you're not getting guys out and if you're not getting hits and you played this long, you are what you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I went with Kepler also. We normally like to have a little variety here, but it's really hard to make an argument for almost anybody else on the team. Part of it might be that I'm predisposed to think about him as the bench because I did pick him for the least valuable player. But truly, I just don't believe the hype that this whole shift ban is really going to impact him. And I think this series, it's one series, right? It's a very long season, but I do wonder if this continues and like his production stays down, sooner or later, they're going to start thinking about making a change.
And I mean, don't lie, David. You had Gallo penciled in here until game 3. Like he was for sure your bench.
Yes, I was ready. Man. I had it already. I was so excited to be like, oh, Hogue chose Gallo. He's on the bench. Ha 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 ha. Correa -1. Oh.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, with that here, let's go to Rocco's Rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
Well, I'm going to start us off here, Hogs, because I have to say, I have been a critic of Rocco in a lot of different ways and not letting starters go deep enough into games. Go ahead and at me. I don't care. I think he should have left guys in last season. I think that he goes to relievers in certain instances who it's like, why? You have other guys available. However, Hogs, he made every right decision in this series to win the game. Every right decision. And that's what makes a manager a great manager, because it's one of those things where you don't even have to talk about it. Like, you don't have to talk about it because it's not an issue. We didn't second guess anything. And even had the results been different, I hope I would still be saying this right now, that I really felt that he made all of the correct decisions, even Pagan. He knows to only bring Pagan in when you have a pretty good buffer to make sure you get that victory.
I think you said that perfectly, because not only were the results there, but the thought process behind it was there as well. And I'm kind of going along, I'm going to go a little bit more granular with it, but him bringing Lopez out for the bottom of the 6th to face Perez with going with that pitching matchup there, even though he knew he was going to bring Thielbar in, I love trusting him to have that guy come out and throw in the 6th after struggling in the 5th with that double and ending up getting that double play. But to be able to send him out there again when he didn't look that great, when he walked a lot of guys in the 5th inning, I loved that risk. I mean, we've been talking about it a lot this preseason. He needs to trust his starters this year, and he has those options right now. So I think that's what's most exciting so far, is he had the options, he used them, and he got the results. He went 3 for 3, but I agree with you. I think even if he didn't get those results, that's what we would have liked to see from him out of this series.
The starter question going deeper into games, I think that's going to come to a head in the next couple of games with Malley and Maeda, the 2 guys who were the least healthy entering the season. But clearly there's been a little bit of a paradigm shift, because he let Gray pitch longer than I think he would have last season. And Lopez, I think the example you gave is spot on, because there's no way last season I think Lopez comes out for that at bat.
I want to rant on Minnesota Twins Twitter here for a little bit, because there was a lot of people coming after Rocco for not letting Lopez pitch farther into that game. Guys, it's the start of this season. He was already over 80 pitches. Like, you go back 10 years and guys would have been pulled in that same situation with that many pitches when you're just starting the season. This is a sign that he's going to let them go later when it gets longer and they're more stretched out. So yeah, it bugged me a little bit, because I'm like, no, he would not have done that in years past. And this is definitely a change for Rocco. So I appreciated that.
Let's go on to the Minnesota moment.
Minnesota moment.
So Minnesota moment, basically, it's what sort of encapsulates the whole feeling of the series. It can either be one particular moment or a series of moments. It can be good, it can be bad. Knowing the Twins, there will be a couple of times this season I'm guessing it will be bad, but I would hope, Hogs, that you chose a good moment for this series.
I mostly did. I'm going with Buxton's triple in game 1, mostly because we were at Target Field with all the season ticket holders. The crowd, I mean, everyone was so excited. It was cheering and like crazy when the center fielder just barely missed the ball, and then right away you're like, oh, that's a triple. Buxton's for sure got a triple. And then I don't know about you, David, but I was 100% thinking, oh, that's a stand-up triple. He's going to be fine.
Yes.
And then the live shot is him sliding into third. And you just, like, we already talked about this, but you just see him go down and he bounced. Like, he not only did he not have to slide, but he hit and he bounced and you could see his face. And let's be honest, he almost wiped out going around second base too, because he lost his helmet and he went to try to catch it and then almost fell there too. And the whole, I kid you not, the entire target field just went because everyone thought he was hurt. And it just summed up what that guy brings to this team. Like, so much excitement. That ended up being the first run of the game too. Ended up being the game winning run. I mean, he has that much ability to impact the game and still scare the tar out of all of us Minnesota Twins fans who just want to see him healthy. So I thought that whole C summed up exactly what he is to this team. Unbelievable player, unbelievable talent, terrifying.
I texted that he looked about as good as I would sliding into third base. Now, I would argue I might bounce a little higher.
Well, yeah, you and I got in a little bit of an argument about who would bounce higher after that play.
I'm not a scientist, Hoges. I don't know. I don't really care to try this out to figure it out who would have bounced more. But anyway, for my Minnesota moment, I'm actually going to pick sort of a series of moments being each of the starts for the starting pitchers for this team. Hoges, I do not remember the last time the Twins started a season and I left that series thinking starting pitching isn't the number one concern for this team. I don't remember. I truly do not remember when that was the case. So to walk out and to see these stats and to see the starters do what they've done, I'm so excited. I'm more excited for the season now, Hoges, than I was right before the season began, which is rarely the case after the first series of baseball.
Well, and not only that, but can you even remember a time when we had 3 starts like this in a row? I mean, you're talking about to start the season. Let's just talk about any time throughout the course of the season. And yeah, I mean, it's weird. Normally it's just like, well, we have a good team other than our starting pitching. And I get it. It's early, but let's take what we got so far. It looks really good. And I think Gray even struggled in his game too, and to still get out of there with no runs. Lopez didn't have his best stuff either. Yeah, I agree. I think I'm more excited about this team than I was before, and it's mostly because of that starting pitching.
I just can't get over how excited I am, and I'm just worried. I want to temper it back a little bit. Tamper? I don't know.
Temper and tamper both work.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Yeah.
I want to push it down. I want to not be as optimistic. I'm kind of known as the curmudgeon, or a little bit more of the pessimistic view when it comes to the Twins. Sometimes I would say, but it's hard because Dan usually balances me out, but you keep egging me on here, Hoges. I'm all pumped. I'm ready to go buy a Correa jersey. Let's do this.
That's the problem. I keep on looking for something to be kind of worried about this team. And I get it. We're playing the Royals, and I guess that's maybe bringing me down a little bit more, but I don't know. I don't see gaping holes that this team has had in the past.
Yes, the Royals is something we should keep in mind. It's the Royals. They're expected to finish at the bottom of the division, or the Tigers. They're the same. It's the same.
But David, we still play them 13 times. And if you sweep them, I mean, that's a lot of wins. So if you beat the teams that you're supposed to beat and even lose to the teams that you're supposed to lose to, you're above 500. I mean, that's how it worked. Yeah, it's a good start.
All right, well, let's keep moving here. Mauer's musings.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's musings.
So again, if you're new to the show, basically this is just a question that we have about the team moving forward, something that came to our mind during the series. And so here's my question, Hoges. Trevor Larnach has had some bad luck when it comes to injury, and you kind of forget about him, and you kind of forget how highly touted he was coming into the league because of the injuries that he struggled with. He's very much like, I kind of consider Larnach to be sort of the stealth Royce Lewis, right? Like, all we hear about is Royce Lewis and the injury and him coming back from it, and then like Larnach's just a guy who got injured, and like Royce Lewis is supposed to be the guy. But my goodness, Hoges, if Larnach stays healthy, here's my question: how important do you think he can be to this team this season?
He's vital. I mean, he's completely vital, because if he's healthy, and then if Kirilloff never comes back, I mean, we need that spot, because then Gallo can play first and Larnach can play left. And without a healthy Kirilloff or a performing Larnach, they're in deep trouble. And I think we forget about how good Larnach can be. I mean, he's had great stretches here for a while, but he has been hurt, and then he struggled when he came up right away. So, I mean, yeah, I think he's incredibly important.
All right, well, let's go to you here, Hoges. What do you have for your musing?
I went a little bit more focused on just these first 3 games here, but my question to you is this the lineup that's going to stick? I mean, if we have the current health that this team has with Polanco out for a while and Kirilloff out for a while, is this what we're going to see? I mean, Rocco has changed so many things last year, mostly out of necessity because of injuries. But those first 3 games, it was pretty consistent. The only big change was Vasquez and Jeffers in game 3. But other than that, it was pretty much the same lineup that he trotted out.
Well, I saw a tweet, and I forget, I didn't vet it, so I don't know that this is true, but I don't know that he played the same lineup twice last season at all. And the first 2 games of this season were the exact same lineup.
It's unbelievable. I mean, that's what happens when you have a team that can produce and you have a bench, because he knows that if the matchups change, he has that ability. He doesn't have to set the lineup right away and stick to it with mostly AAA and AA guys.
Are you frustrated with the front office that they didn't make these depth moves previously?
It does seem a little bit obvious, like especially with guys that have injury history, but I don't know. At the same time, you almost have to look at it with like, okay, a guy's been hurt. He's not going to get hurt again next year. But I guess this year, I mean, and finally they were just like, no, we're going to prepare for it. We're going to prepare as if the worst is going to happen. I mean, because you look back at our last few years, depth is what killed them. And so I'm glad they finally did decide to. It is hard to second guess. It's easy to say, yes, I wish they would have changed it. But at the same time, you can't expect to get hit by lightning twice.
True story. It's so funny because they didn't sign depth from other AAA rosters. They signed starting players. Like, they signed guys who on a lot of different teams in the MLB could be starting. Speaking of which, Jake Cave's starting for the Phillies. Yeah. What?
It's unbelievable. I can't believe he's out there. But like, you make a solid point, David. It's not, I mean, this whole thing changed after they signed Correa, because before it was just like, oh, great, Kyle Farmer's our starting shortstop. That's just what we can have to look with. But that depth that they signed is major league caliber starting people. And I think that's huge. And it has already paid off. It paid off in game 1.
I can't believe it. I'm so happy. You've said it time and time again this episode thus far, and it's just so accurate. Rocco has tools at his disposal. And truly, I think that this season, 2019 was an anomaly for a lot of different reasons. But obviously, they're playing with a bouncy ball that's being thrown from the pitcher. And like, no matter who Rocco put in, it seemed like they could hit a homer. But like, in this particular instance, this season, I think is really important for the evaluation of Rocco, because he finally has tools available at his disposal that will show his managerial prowess, and less sort of just, let's just see what happens.
I hate agreeing with you so much, but you couldn't have said that better. And I feel a little bit validated by that, because I feel like the three of us have kind of been protecting Rocco maybe than the average Twins fan has, because our main point is, what else was he supposed to do? Like, oh, I can't believe he put so-and-so in. Yeah, but if not them, who? Like Nick Gord? I mean, what else are you going to do? And this year he has the options. So I think it is very fair to judge him on how this year goes. Early returns are good.
All right, well, let's keep moving here, Hogs. Series grades time.
Series grades.
As you may expect, series grades is when we give a grade, A through F, for the performance of the team. I'll let you start us off, Hogs.
I'm frustrated with you. I got to be honest. I went with an A, and I'm looking at your number right here, and all you're doing is trying to just be divisive. And mission accomplished, David. What more do you want? Like, are you just the teacher who's like, I can't believe they figured it out? Well, we're going to make them feel stupid a little bit here. Like, I am so glad I am not in your class.
No, that's not
by the way,
happening.
I'm making it sound like you gave them an F here, but what did you give them, David?
I gave them an A-. My
How
goodness.
dare you?
So I gave it an A-, and the only reason why is because there were a lot of missed opportunities from the offensive side of the ball in this series. First of all, 27 guys left on base, Hogs. That is a lot of guys left on base for a 3-game series. And runners in scoring position, this I'm actually not really upset with. They went 9 for 27. So those of you who are math whizzes like Hogs, they'll figure out that that's 33%. But 9 for 27, 33% isn't bad, obviously. If somebody's batting .333 with guys in scoring position, we'll take that almost every day. But the left on base, 27 guys left on base. Let's up those numbers here to get those guys home. And then I'll give you an A every time.
I want to attack you right now, but I know you're just trying to temper your enthusiasm. So I'll give you a pass. Your metric is trash. I mean, let's just be honest. But we've known that for years now, so we can move on.
Okay. Well, let's go on to Herbie's headline.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
So this is basically a segment where we talk about nothing that, it doesn't have to be Twins specific, but just something that's happening across the league. And Hoges, I don't know if you're familiar, they made a couple of rules changes entering this season. Have you heard about those at all?
No, not at all. I mean, I've heard like someone talking in my ear about bigger bases, and then it's going to matter a whole lot. The Twins are going to run a lot more. I didn't see them running a lot more, but I guess. But yeah, everyone, the biggest changes was the pitch clock, and there were only 14 violations for the pitch clock on opening day, and the time of games were reduced by over 30 minutes on average, which is insane. And I'd like to hear your thoughts a little bit, David, but you and I were at the game, and granted, it was just a watch party. It wasn't actually a game in front of us, but my internal clock was so thrown off this entire game. I would go over to talk to someone after an at-bat ended, and there'd be no one on base, and I would talk to them for what felt like 30 seconds. I would look back at the screen, and there'd be 3 guys on base, 2 outs, and a full count. I mean, it was so bizarre how fast it went. But at the same time, I got back home after the game, and I watched the Angels game, and it was incredible on TV. So I think my original takeaway right now is I'm going to love watching it on TV, and it's going to be an adjustment in person. It just felt like it went by too fast.
100% agree with everything you've just said here. So man, we are Hoges. It's hard when the Twins win.
Much.
It's too much because
when they're 3-0, like what are you gonna get mad about?
We can't
An
even
A-.
yell at each
That's what
other.
I'm gonna get mad at.
We can't even yell at each other. No, but I think your points are great here. I do think that in person, it did feel funny.
One other note that I'd like to make for Herbie's headlines, just because Dan isn't here, Aaron Judge hit a home run in his first at bat. So the march to breaking the actual NL record this year with Barry the Cheater Bonds. I mean, it could happen. So it was interesting to see. It's so hard. I don't want to root for a Yankee, but I hate Bonds. So what do you do?
My goodness, yeah, Dan's Judge love is known throughout the land.
All rise for Dan's Judge Love.
Watching the games at home, it is just different. And I'll say, I think my wife appreciates it a lot, knowing that like I'll be a much more attentive husband and father because the games are that much shorter.
Well, that was the interesting thing too. Even going to that game, it was a 3:10 start. I was home in time for bedtime. I mean, it was easy, and that was kind of nice too. But it was definitely bizarre being at the game and it going that fast. I think the game time was 2.5 hours for opening day. So yeah, it was crazy.
Well, with that, Hoges, let's move on to Puckett's picks for the upcoming Marlins series.
And we'll see you tomorrow.
Puckett's Picks.
Dan had scheduled an email with his Puckett's picks and his order because we weren't sure where it would end and he wasn't sure how his Wi-Fi signal in Chile would be upon first arrival. I had told him, unless something crazy happens, Dan, you're likely picking last. Well, something crazy did happen, and it doesn't change where Dan's going to pick because Correa performed so poorly for me. However, Hoges, you would have gotten last pick if you weren't picking for the listeners. But because you're picking for the listeners, even though you won, you'll get first pick yet again.
I love how you just have to qualify that a little bit. You're just setting people up for if I win it. Well, he got to pick first, even though he won. I mean, it's
you
fine.
won with
It's
Gallo.
fine.
You won with Gallo. That would not have been the guy who I would have taken.
Been available at my third pick.
I that's what I'm saying.
We can all agree for that.
I was defending you, Hoges.
I'm trying to pick a fight. We haven't fought enough in this episode. I'm just trying to look for it. But I'm going to go against the grain that I guess I established, and I'm going to pick Buxton. He looked so good in this series. I think Gallo's kind of a boom or bust sort of a guy, and I feel like Buxton's going to be a little more consistent. I'm happy to see that he's still healthy. I think maybe we'll see him out in the field. I guess maybe they're saying he's just going to DH all of April, but it's nice to see the production that he's had and his success on the base pass. So I'm going with Buxton.
Yeah, not a bad pick. And like we should give a shout out to Michael A. Taylor, who played center field great. You know, he didn't provide a ton of offensive production, but again, he doesn't need to. He just needs to be a great center fielder. And you know what? Get on base every now and again. We'll take that.
Absolutely. He is a step down from Buxton, but it's a small step, and having him out there just brings a lot of confidence to those pitchers.
Absolutely. So then I get next pick because Dan scored higher than I did, and my rule still applies. Correa, he just needs a little bit of time to warm up, so I'm going to take Correa, and I'm pretty convinced he's going to win Puckett's picks for me this next series.
I don't hate that pick at all. I actually had him when we were talking, getting ready for the podcast. I had him typed in for about 5 minutes, and then right before we start, I actually switched it over. I don't even know if you saw that when it was up there for a bit, but I had Correa in there. I went with Buxton, but I agree. I think Correa is going to start getting hot.
And then Dan takes Larnach, which is not shocking because after his performance this series, I almost feel bad, honestly, not picking him for the Beast, but there were so many good options, and one of us had to give it to Buxton just because of how vital he was to these victories.
It's really hard to poke holes in anyone that you'd pick for Puckett's picks for next series because of so many guys who showed some promise. I mean, even Miranda was getting into it a little bit. I think there's a lot of guys that can produce on this team right now. And you got to think going against the Marlins, ones. There's runs to be had there.
Yeah, I hope there's more offensive production, certainly.
Not leaving 27 guys on base would be nice in this next series.
Well, Hoges, we did it. First episode, first series recap, first Puckett's picks, winner, Bees versus Bench. We did the whole gambit. You and me, thanks again so much for filling in. And folks, if you didn't listen to the season prediction show, you can go back and listen. But Dan gave a very heartfelt apology that he'll be in Chile for the first 3 series of the season. So you'll be with Hoges and I for these first 3 series. Hoges, honestly, this is great that you can fill in because people don't want to just hear me talk, Hoges. People need to have somebody here representing them, explaining to me why I'm so wrong about so many things.
It's been a blast. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to make you even more jealous with how much more sunburned I'm going to be when we do our next episode too. But yeah, this is a blast. Dan, I hope you're having fun in Chile. But yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and send us out. Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on Twitter at Men for the Win and find our Men for the Win Facebook page. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube so that you're notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating or a like, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show further, you can find us on Patreon. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Twins. That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, 2 avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.